Okay, today I'm going to go through the famous Z340 cipher. We're going to be looking at the very last line of the Z340 cipher. For a long time, this last line has really had me confused because I thought it was simply truncated words that were easily defined. So you have MDHN, something that looks like it could be a 9 or a 6, or what we're starting to learn is like some kind of animal image, but the person who did the drawings was very specific in that. So it looks like it was done with a marker that was very thick. And as you go through it, your first glance is that it's some kind of broken down way to say Zodiac, right? Navy with a dot. And then SK, which is shopkeeper. I don't think there's an SK6 or an SK9, but some type of shopkeeper at Hunters Point Naval Shipyard in the medical division. And I still don't know that it doesn't say that. But because I've become much more adept at understanding how the Zodiac's code, I do have an alternative theory. These codes are messages, and they're also internal instructions for things to do. I used to think PB was like pilot briefing. Could be. But now I'm thinking, really? Maybe. JG could be, this and that. And I mean, there's a lot of things here. This symbol right here looks like Navy with the dot. But what is it really? So it looks like a E on one side and a C on the other, or it could be a JC. It's really hard in the 340 cipher to determine what's what, except in this one area. Let me see if I can get it to you. See right here, U plus R is your. This middle word is definitely a way to say identity. B, and then there's a 9. Or is it? Upside down, it's a 6. Is this another B or an 8? Well, the B has pointers, and this one is more like 2 bowling balls, so that's 68 TMKO. Well, the person that they're talking about is identified by 09. That is a pay rank. In the Z408, the 09 is prefaced by an LTG, Lieutenant General. So if 09 is LTG 09, then your identity B in 68 TMKO is General Throckmorton. It's a small universe. There's we were the only army to have an LTG 09 on the planet Earth at the time. India had the designation of Lieutenant General, but they didn't have the pay rank of 09. It's a small universe of people. The only person who has those initials in their name that was an LTG 09 in 68 was General Throckmorton. So that line right there in 1968 had the ability to be like DNA for me in terms of the Z340, because There's 3.6 billion people on the planet Earth, and we narrowed it down to one person in a very relatively easy way because it's a very known quantity. It's a very researchable quantity, and the text is very easy to read. Now, I believe that there's probably more in that line than what we see. Like, I believe there's a reason why the T is upside down. But the EIIDY identity is fairly easy to understand. And they're trying to identify a person. So it's not a transposition substitution. Could there have been where you took, the first letter at the top, right? Went down and got the dot, and then you did, the third letter of the next line, the fourth of the next, the fifth of the next, the sixth of the next, the seventh of the next, the eighth of the next, and kept going down to create a new code that you extracted, right? And you keep doing that all the way through, and then you find a shift for that new code into what? Like, they're not all alphabets. They're not all letters. They're symbols. So how would you know what it was to shift the symbols back into, even if it was coded that way? The only explanation we ever got from David Ornchak was that it was his software program using a crib that allowed him to decode this cipher. A crib is having a known, right? So when I show you U plus R identity B in 68 TMKO, and we break it down to one person in 3.6 billion in a military, right, of standard designations where there's really no interpretation, when we understand that throughout all the ciphers that 09 is the identifier for this person that they keep referring to, and that we got earlier clues that it's LTG 09, right? Then it's hard to believe that if you transposed and substituted that line, the whole line as it is, you're just going to create a new code. That's what's called plain text. That's why it's difficult to believe that he actually decoded the 340 cipher. That being said, there is information in here that can be decoded and identified. This last line, though, I've learned new information that makes me think that it's easier to decode than we think, but you would have to know what it is that they're talking about. And it could have two meanings, but you're not transposing and substituting the letters and the symbols. What you're doing is you're trying to identify in the order that they are with as much discipline as possible what it actually says. So even when we say up here, you are your, identity B in 68 TMKO, we're kind of using some phonetic clues because it doesn't spell it out completely. But if it did, it wouldn't actually be a code, would it? But at the same time, we're staying disciplined to their positions, right? And I found that that's what's really important in decoding Zodiac codes, is to try to really stay disciplined to their positions unless they're turned backwards in some kind of way where it's saying, okay, I need you to move this one either forward or backward, or read it a different way, right? And so that's the slightest amount of substitution, but it's hard because they create codes that give you a visual answer that may be an answer they want you to have, an obvious answer that gives you an answer that makes you move on so that you don't get the underlying answer that is actually in there that is giving you the evidence of what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they want to do it, because they're using these things for multiple communications. There's a surface message for the outside, there's a trick, and then there's actual instructions for internal communications, which was a clue I got on Reddit that made this amazing, was that they were communicating with each other internally. And that's where you get the real information that's investigatively important. So we recently found out that there was a guy named H.M. Love. So you see this really dark triangle. I have a feeling that that's some kind of plane, but I also have a feeling that's a directional signal. So it's saying, okay, include that into this bottom line. So H.M. Love, that would be the H, L, and the O, is what I'm thinking. Now, I could be wrong about that, right? I could definitely be wrong about that. But where it says Z-O, this thing in A-I-K, you would say that's Navy Zodiac. I don't even really disagree with that's what its surface meaning is, but there is a deeper meaning to this. So H.M. Love was actually in operations, right? He is a Zodiac. So here's your symbol, the Zodiac, right? So you have H.M. Love, operations. He is a Zodiac. But where was he located? Well, he was located at NAS Alameda. And so the AL, I believe, is actually Alameda. What we think is a K is, again, the diagram of the unique configuration of the Alameda runways at that Naval Air Station. So this is the map showing, hey, look, we're talking about Alameda. So now I'm thinking, all right, even if this bottom line, oh, come on. I hate when it does that. I really do. Okay, so even if this bottom line is like Medical Division, Hunters Park, SK, whatever, Zodiac, Navy, okay, maybe somebody is that. Maybe there's some, I don't know much about Hunters Park to know if that's true. There is a deeper meaning here. So now that we've got that this is Alameda, right? I'm not sure if this is just Navy. It looks like a J and a C. J left, C right. Navy JC with the dot, which is Elon. Now, I know that they were getting kicked out for being gay. And if you're trying to fight that through personnel, you're probably going to get a JAG Corps representative. Apparently, this was enough for them to want to kill over because it was completely discriminatory. And considering that the Zodiacs are probably all the people who were quiet and gay in the military and revolting because of this person, '09, who was on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who was caught with a transgender and not punished. And they felt like, okay, he's abandoning us. The story goes that he was sending people out to get rid of anybody who knew about his situation. And that's what these letters are about, is to put that information in writing and threaten him with his job. That's why they're talking about the Mikado. In other words, they were saying the only way to get the executions to stop is to make the next victim the executioner. That's the thing in the Mikado. So the Mikado was a town of people who would get convicted of flirting, and the penalty for flirting was death. And so if the executioner was the next victim, then he'd have to kill himself, or the executions would stop. That's what the Mikado was about. So if they could put the lieutenant general's career in harm's way, right, then maybe he would stop going after them. And then I think there was another reason that was a certain person was on the stump, because he was the head of the personnel department that dealt with patrol boats, PBRs. And I think one of the Zodiac's goals was to get personnel for PBRs and so on and so forth for the lower half of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, because he believed that the supplies were coming through Cambodia, not the north, which actually turned out to be true. And during the Vietnam War, we got instructions from higher ups to not go into Cambodia. But he briefed them 91 times and they blew him off. And I think he finally said, you know what? I got another way to get at you guys. So that's the larger story. But back to this coding. So if all that is relatively true, right? What do we have here? Let's say that H.M. Love was gay, Ellen was gay, Charlie was gay, or at least bisexual, all these people, and that they had knowledge of this guy, TMKO, that he was, and they put this all into a letter for purposes of extortion, and that they don't actually talk to each other on the phone. That they use these ciphers to communicate what actions need to be taken, while at the same time exposing the information that they have to the people that they're trying to extort. But you've got to talk to the person of whom you've got the ransom from, that you want something from, right? How do you get to that person? You call them on the phone, you got to send them a letter. You don't know if they actually know what you've written here, what you said here. You're hoping that they do, right? But maybe you have a contact or somebody behind the scenes who's making information go back and forth. And I think that's what H.M. Love was, but he was an operative. So he worked, at least was there at a certain point on the USS Enterprise when it was docked at Alameda Naval Station, right, in 1968, before it went on Westpac. And he was in the operations department. He was a Zodiac, right? But how do you know? That's a large boat. How would you know where to find this guy if you didn't know exactly who he was? Well, operations covers a lot of areas, but one of the areas that they seem to specialize in was intelligence operations or reconnaissance. So if this dark spot is not only just a directional signal, but also like a spy plane, okay, so now you know it's intelligence. Which squadron? Well, the S could be squadron, and guess what? RVAH-1, the Smoking Tigers, well, their tail sign on their plane, their reconnaissance plane, which was the same plane in each of the RVAH groups, squadrons, just modified, but when it was on the USS Enterprise, was actually in K. So we look here, and K seems to be written correctly here at the end, but it's backwards over here. So they want you to substitute that K somewhere else. The only thing I'm saying is move the K over to the N, which looks like a Z, which is what we were supposed to think. But just think that they have the Zodiac sign there, right? Even though it might also mean Zodiac, but if it's an internal message for someone, like, see where it says CC up here? Could that be closed copy? Why not? And then it has the plus sign here, which is a railroad crossing a conjunction, but also plays another specific role as a plus sign. That's how ingenious this is. If you kind of understand what the subject matter is, it makes it really easy to read this. So the dot would be Ellen. That's Morse code for E. And if this is Squadron KN, right? So then we know it's RVAH-1, and that you are trying to find H.M. Love, right? A Zodiac in RVAH-1 at Alameda, right? For some reason. And then you have MDHN and what looks like, at least at this point, a 9 that needs to be moved backwards too. So the K and the 9 are the two things that are out of position, right? What could this message possibly be? Well, let me give you a scenario. Closed caption. Elon. JAGCOR is saying something. I'm thinking that the MDHN are the symbols for military communications that say month, day, hour, and the N is for reassignment, like D-Day and all those other things. So this note, if you move the K and the N over to the other side, a number plus or minus being used with MDHN would absolutely be saying mobilization day hour for redeployment. Zodiac operative HM Love of RVAH1 with the NK, right? At Alameda Naval Air Station, according to the JC, the JAGCOR, is +9. That means 9 days from this letter, HM Love is probably going to be reassigned. Might even be getting kicked out of the Navy because he was found out to be bisexual. Or he just may be being reassigned to where she can't get to him and she needs to get to him in order to get a message delivered. Now, believe me, there is another answer I could have for this line, but I think that that's one of the messages. And I think that they do use multiple messages sometimes. Like, even though I think that that's what this message says, I think it also says hand deliver message. I think that the HN and the D and the M is hand deliver message, but that's not as disciplined. You know, I'm actually taking the HN and making hand, and then I'm going backwards to the D and the M. If I were to just strictly stay with how it's set, but although it could have all those meanings and still not move any of the figures and be a complete message. I believe that he's telling Elon, you need to get to go see HM Love. You've got 9 days, and to hand deliver whatever it is, the message that we're talking about, which might be that the joint, the JAGCOR is he's going to get reassigned in 9 days, so he needs to get done whatever it is that we planted him in operations to do. I believe that that is the total message. And there's no reason it can't be. The message is obviously whatever it is that the person who wanted to make it happen. But on its face, without breaking the discipline that's sitting here, you have mobilization, day, hour, and redeployment of a Zodiac. And then with the Zodiac being a crosshairs also, you have the PB. I have a feeling that he might be getting reassigned to a patrol boat, a PBR. Right? So that would be the total message, is that HM Love, mobilization date and hour for redeployment to a patrol boat. And that JC could be Joint Chiefs, which is would be the J1 program, which is Throckmorton was in charge of personnel. He was in charge of the Joint Chiefs J1 program. And so maybe this is saying, hey, we've got word from the Joint Chiefs J1 program that HM Love mobilization day hour for redeployment to a patrol boat from Squadron NK, which is RVAH-1, from Alameda, Elon, is +9. Hand deliver the message to him. Trying to give him a heads up so whatever plans they have, he knows he's only got 9 days to get it done. That's my theory now. The only way I can prove that that's true is to get the personnel records for HM Love and to see if he actually was redeployed or reassigned within 9 or 10 days of this letter. And particularly if it was to a PBR unit, then that's absolute confirmation that we're reading this correctly. I know that I can crack it because I definitely know that your identity be TMKO right in 68 when you're talking about 09 is Throckmorton. Yeah, that was easy. But so this is the more proper way to read the Z340 cipher versus what theoretically the stretch of what David Oranchak and his crew supposedly did, right? And even if they were successful, which I doubt when you look at what he says, how he did it, because he said he had a crib, which is a known. What known did he have? He said he threw out some information because he thought it was unnecessary. He said that the Zodiac made a mistake that he corrected. All those are words that really sound like you just reconstructed your own code and deciphered it into your own words. But we'll leave that alone. This would be the better way to read it and to get the type of information you need to verify without bias that the information that you've gathered from the other communications showing these certain people self-identified as Zodiacs and that there is internal communications and that they are, some of them, at NAS Alameda, and they're talking to each other through these outward communications to do something, right, is the way to get information out of these. This is how the military intelligence work. That's what these are. These are military intelligence communications. This is top level stuff in simple forms that allowed field people to get messages that by time the enemy figured it out, the action was already completed because that was all it was needed. It didn't need to be secret for 50 years. These are military operational intelligence communications. So that's the lesson for today. Again, I think this says that the month, M could be the month of mobilization. So M for mobilization, the mobilization day, hour for redeployment, in as redeployment, right? For Zodiac to a PBR unit. That Zodiac being HM Love, who's in the operations department, right? For Squadron NK, which is RVAH-1, is ±9 days, according to the Joint Chiefs J1 personnel records, of which somebody has got privy to. And the dot is Elon. That's the message to her. She's got 9 days. And I guess it's from Alameda, NAS Naval Air Station. So that's what the AL is for. And the what looks like a K is actually a diagram of the unique construction of the runways at Alameda. So girlfriend's got to tell that guy he got 9 days to get the job done because he's heading to a PBR boat somewhere in Vietnam and he's not going to be in Alameda long. I think that's what that is. I just wanted to clean one thing up. I do realize the 9 is in its right place. It's right where it's supposed to be. It's the K is the only one that's backwards. So it's, you know, how many days for mobilization and and hours and for reassignment is 9.